What's up guys, and welcome to another video. In today's video, I'll be talking about one of my favorite videos on how to build an MVP, which is a YC video on how to plan an MVP by Michael Seibel, CEO of Y Combinator and co-founder of Twitch and Justin TV. This will be a three-part video series, and in part one of this video series, we'll be covering topics like how to understand your users, how to build your MVP, and also examples, real-life examples of MVPs from well-known companies like Stripe and Airbnb. For those of you who aren't familiar with YC, YC stands for Y Combinator, and it's an incubator, a startup incubator in Mountain View that has produced some of the most famous companies that you have probably heard of, like Stripe, Airbnb. I'll be doing a live commentary on Seibel's video and focusing on the points that he makes, especially points that I think could benefit from additional clarification. So with that, let's get right into the video.
My name is Michael. I work here at Y Combinator. I help run the accelerator. Before that, I did two YC startups, one in 2007 and one in 2012. And today I'm going to talk to you about minimum viable product, so MVP. We always yell at founders to not use jargon, yet we have this whole set of stupid startup jargon, and MVP is one of them. When you think about an MVP, you should think about something ridiculously simple. This is the first thing you can give to the very first set of users you want to target in order to see if you can deliver any value at all to them. That's all it is. It's extremely simple.
So the reason he says this is because you want to make sure your minimum viable product actually delivers value to the people who decide to use your product. If it doesn't, no one is going to use your product. It doesn't have to be your product's full value proposition. It can just be an inkling of value to see if you actually get people interested in your product. So what I'm doing right now with my product is I only have one user, and I'm only delivering one of the many features that I could potentially deliver in my MVP. And I'm taking small steps at a time. I'm focusing on the current iteration of my product, making sure that the feature I'm offering actually delivers the value it's supposed to deliver. And I'm staying very close to my user to make sure that I am delivering value, which is why you want to be very lightweight with your feature set at the start. Build iteratively, try to build one feature at a time, especially when you're at the early stages of your MVP's development, and then just take it step by step. Focus on the feature you're building right now and see if it actually delivers value. If it does, and it does for a certain set of users, and it delivers value to a point where you think, okay, this feature is good to go, I can now focus on the next feature, and that is something you have to define for yourself, then great, you can move on to the next feature. That is a far more effective method of product development than churning out 10 features that you think that's the main point, you think delivers value, and then having 9 of those features flop. Instead, you want to just build one feature that you think actually offers value, test it with your user, see if your user actually finds it valuable, and then move on to the next feature.
I know you guys got to talk last week about how to come up with ideas, how to come up with problems you want to solve. What I will tell you is that it is helpful to talk to some users before you decide to build your MVP. This doesn't mean you have to go into a 3-year kind of research situation, or you have to work in industry for 10 years. But some conversations are helpful. It's even more helpful if you're your own user, so you can tell whether your product's working for you. I always get this strange question of how do I get my first users, which always kind of confuses me because theoretically you decide to solve a problem that you know someone has. So the way you get your first user is you talk to that person that you know has the problem. And if it's you, it's even easier.
Just to add to this, a great way to find potential users for your product is to go on websites like Reddit and talk to people in certain subreddits that you think will have people who have the problem you're trying to solve. So for me, for instance, I'm trying to solve something related to careers. So I am always on career-related subreddits like career change, like find a path. These are subreddits where you can definitely find people who have the problem you're trying to solve. And if you do spot those people, send them a direct message. chat with them. And then maybe afterwards start a subreddit and try to invite all these people into one subreddit so you can talk to them all at once.
So if you are building a product for a mysterious set of users that you have no idea who they are, question that slightly, very slightly. Okay, so the goal of a pre-launch startup is extremely simple. Step one, launch quickly. This is something that's been part of the YC ethos from the very beginning, and it's been great advice for 10 years, and it continues to be great advice. If you can walk away from one thing from this presentation, it's launch something bad quickly. That's it. Like literally the rest of what I'm going to say is basically going to be re-summarized versions of that same thing.
The reason why he says this is because an MVP is a tool to test your understanding of your user. Before developing an MVP, you only have theories about what your user finds valuable. In order to test those theories, in order to find the truth, you have to build something, show it to your users, and see if they actually get the value that you think they will get.
The second thing that an early stage startup needs to do is get some initial customers. Get anyone using your product. You don't have to have a vision of how you get everyone using it, but just anyone interacting and seeing if they can get value out of the product. You'd be surprised at how many founders' journeys end before a single user has actually interacted with a product they've created. It's very, very common. So please get past this step. It's extremely important. The next one is talk to your users, any of them, after you've launched this MVP, and get feedback. This is one that's also extremely common mistake because most founders in their heads have an idea of what they want to build. And so they kind of have this weird feeling that if I haven't built the full thing yet, getting feedback on the initial thing is kind of useless. Of course, it's not going to work. It's not the full thing. The full thing's going to take 3 years, $10 million, a whole team. So feedback on the little thing is useless. The reality is that in some ways, the full thing is this really awesome idea in your head that you should keep in your head, but it should be very, very flexible because it might turn out the full thing that you want to build isn't what your customers want at all. So,
which is why you should build iteratively. You should go from iteration after iteration of your product and take small steps to improving your product, not building the full thing only to find out that your users actually don't want what you thought they wanted in a product.
So I have this saying, hold the problem you're solving tightly, hold the customer tightly, hold the solution you're building loosely.
This is very important advice. Hold your customer tightly. Always be in constant contact with your customer so that you can understand if what you've built actually gives them the value that they were promised.
And last, most important, iterate. And I like to kind of distinguish between iterating and pivoting. A lot of founders, once they've figured out how to build something, fall in love with it. And so if it doesn't work for a certain set of users, they start thinking, well, I wonder what other problems this thing can solve. Well, the screwdriver is not actually good at screwing in anything, but I wonder what other problems it could solve. And they're like, oh, maybe you can use it to cook. Maybe you can use it to clean. And it's like, no, the problem was I need to screw something in. The user was like a mechanic, and if your screwdriver doesn't help the mechanic solve the problem, keep the mechanic, keep the problem. I need to screw something in, fix the fucking screwdriver. That's the thing that's broken, right? The broken thing is not the mechanic, and it's not the fact that they need to screw something in. So iterate.
The reason he says this is because the point of building a startup is to solve a problem. It's not to build a product to then find a problem to solve.
Continue improving on your solution until it actually solves a problem. In most cases, most people should be building a very lean MVP. So by that we mean you should be able to build it fast in weeks, not months. This can either involve software or honestly, we see startups just start with a landing page and a spreadsheet. But most startups can start very, very fast. Second, extremely limited functionality. You need to condense down what your user needs, what your initial user needs, to a very simple set of things. A lot of times founders want to address all of their users' problems and all of their potential users. when in reality, they should just focus on a small set of initial users and their highest order problems, and then ignore the rest until later. You should have a vision of everyone. You should have an MVP very small. All this is a base to iterate from. That's it. It's just a starting point. It's not special in any way. You just have to start. And so please make sure you don't feel like your MVP is too special. Okay, here is a classic example. This is one of Airbnb's first landing pages in 2008, I believe. One of the things that you might be interested in Airbnb's first product is that there were no payments. When you found a place to stay on Airbnb, you had to exchange money with the host in person. Needless to say, that was a pretty big problem, but they started without payments. No map view. You know how when you search Airbnb, you can see where the house is in the city? You don't have that, sorry. And the person writing all the code, Nate, was working part-time. Okay? So everyone tells these kind of magical stories about how everything was perfect from the beginning. Airbnb, not perfect from the beginning. The next one, Twitch. This was what Twitch looked like day one. Not very familiar. Well, maybe a little familiar. There's some video there and there's some chat there. Other than that, nothing else. Twitch launched as Justin TV, which was a online reality TV show. There was only one channel, Justin. You had to follow his life. If you didn't like his life, you had to leave the website. That's all there was. The video was extremely low resolution. It was funny. A founder asked me back in the day, wasn't it weird you guys had video in your apartment? Weren't there all these secret documents and things that people would be able to see? And it was you could barely recognize our faces, let alone documents that we had. And most importantly, there were no video games. No video games, except if we decided to play video games in our apartment. That was the only time video games ever appeared. And so, needless to say, you can do that quickly. When you think about Twitch, it's much more complex now. Last, Stripe, which wasn't Stripe. It was called /dev/payments, because why not? Let's make a name that's really easy to remember. This was Stripe day one. No bank deals. I won't tell you exactly how they process payments, but it was in a very startup-y way. Almost no features. And even cooler, if you wanted to use Stripe, the Stripe founders would come to your office and integrate it for you. How nice is that? Half because they were just desperate to get anyone to use it, and half because it was a great way to find bugs before the users found bugs. Integrate yourself. So these are just 3 examples of extremely simple, extremely fast to build MVPs. All of these are billion-dollar companies, and they all started with something that most people would say is pretty.
So just focusing on lean MVPs, the reason why you should keep the functionality of your MVP as limited as possible is because at the start you don't know which benefits and features your users care about most. You only have theories. You should also focus on early adopters who are desperate, which is what Michael actually recommends in a different video, that you should focus on users who are desperate to have the problem you're solving solved. And the way to find desperate users is to try to address the highest order pain points of the user segment you're going for. The best way, practical advice to do this would be to go on Reddit, for instance, and to try to find people who are screaming about the problem, who are telling other people through a thread that, hey, I have this huge problem, I don't know what to do, what should I do? If you are on Reddit at all, jump into that thread or jump into those threads straight away and try to understand that person's problem, that person's pain points, and then maybe propose a solution after gaining a solid enough understanding of that person's problem. You should also understand that an MVP is a base to iterate from. Just repeating Michael's words, you should focus on using your MVP as a way to test your understanding of your users. It's not the full thing yet, and it can't be because you, at this point, probably only have theories about what your user actually values. The only way to confirm those theories is to build out a very minimal feature set and to try to test if your theories about what your user values or the benefits that your users want are actually true.
In very few cases, you have to build a heavy MVP. I just invented that term, heavy MVP, when I made this presentation 2 days ago. So, maybe it becomes a thing. If you're in an industry with significant regulation, like insurance or banking, sometimes drones, although sometimes not, it's hard to launch. It's harder to launch. You have to pass through a bunch of regulatory bodies first. If you're doing hard tech, if you are building rockets, it is hard to build a rocket in a couple weeks. Biotech, it is hard to invent a cancer drug in a couple weeks. Moonshots, well, fill in all the other blanks. It's hard to bore tunnels in the earth and have extremely fast vehicles that replace cars in a couple weeks. So if you're in that situation, please remember that your MVP can start with a simple website that explains what you do. It's helpful when you talk to people, when you interact with people, that they can refer back to something. So that can be your start, and you can build that simple website in days, not weeks. So in many ways, maybe your heavy MVPs are faster than your lean MVPs in some weird, strange way.
So just to recap everything that Michael said, you should remember that your MVP is just a base to iterate from, and that iteration is what you want to be doing. You also want to be constantly talking to your users, understanding if your MVP actually solves their problem. And if not, you want to be constantly refining your MVP so that it actually does target the pain points you want to target for your users. Also, in addition to building a website to showcase your value proposition, you also want to be engaging with the people who you do engage with your website, who do ask further questions about what your product can do for them. Those are probably going to be your early adopters, those people, the people who engage back. And sometimes that conversion rate isn't very high. You might reach out to 100 people. Like for instance, for my product, I created a subreddit with 77 members, I think right now. And only one person reached back out after I publicized my MVP on the subreddit. Only one person reached back out to engage with me, to ask me how I could further deliver my value proposition to them. And now this person is my first user. So that's it for part 1 of my commentary on the YC video, how to plan an MVP. I'll be doing part 2 in the next few days. Thanks again for watching this video. If you have any comments or thoughts, feel free to share them in the comment section. I'd love to chat about this or answer any questions that you might have. And don't forget to hit the like button and hit subscribe if you like this kind of content. And with that, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.